In her capacity as a therapist, our next guest has worked with Steve Reynolds since about last October. She is with the Center for Cognitive Rehabilitation at Good Samaritan Hospital in Puyallup. Please welcome Kathy Miller. Just before we get around to when you entered the picture with Steve, I want to ask him one other question about what he may remember. When you began coming out of this coma and recognizing people and responding to things back in the hospital, what do you remember about the public response and the response of your fans to what had happened to you?
The response was tremendous. I received cards and letters from all over the United States, some from Mexico, some from Canada, as well as the United States, but a matter of between 10 and 15 a day.
Isn't it amazing what kind of response that can provoke? We talked to Shirley Muldowney, of course, who went through that horrible crash, and she told us pretty much the same thing, that the flood of letters and good, well wishes was just unbelievable. Yeah,
they told me how they were wishing me well, they were praying for me, and all they wanted to see me was recover.
You came back out to Seattle, and you entered a facility that's called the Greenery.
Yep.
And you stayed there for 2 or 3 months, 2.5 months, right? And then you and Kathy began working together down in Puyallup. What do you see when you meet someone like Steve for the first time and knowing what he had been through? What are you looking for?
Well, he goes through an evaluation process through each treatment area, and there we're able to determine what limitations he has at that time. And as an interdisciplinary treatment team, we focus on those weaknesses to maximize his progress and his independence.
Is each head injury a little different, Kathy?
Each are very unique, yes.
So you really have to evaluate a patient on an individual basis to know what's going on.
Right.
What kind of things do you and Steve work on together when you're together in the therapy?
Well, Steve comes to our therapy 5 days a week from 8 in the morning until 4:30 in the evening.
That's like a full-time job.
It is, believe me, it is.
We have an interdisciplinary treatment team which consists of cognitive therapy, which focuses on thinking skills, his memory, his attention, his processing of information. We have psychosocial therapy, which works on his adjustment to disability. We have occupational therapy, which works on independent living skill. Vocational therapy, which is readily available to prepare him for a vocation. And then therapeutic recreation, which works on how to independently pursue leisure activities and how to get reintegrated back out into the community.
Is it accurate to say that a lot of the things that you and I might take for granted, Steve is simply having to learn to do all over again?
You bet. It's a big adjustment.
What a devastating thing to go through.
Major.
Do you get frustrated in this process?
Constantly, every day.
How do you handle that frustration?
I deal with it.
I suppose you have to.
I don't have any choice.
Yeah.
It's either be frustrated and don't deal with it, or be frustrated, deal with it, and get better. And I'm there for one reason, that's to get better.
Let's talk about just a couple of specific things. Can you drive a car?
In time, I should be able to drive a car.
Now you are not.
Yeah, well, they've taken my license from me.
Oh, have they?
Yeah. The state has.
That puts a limitation on you.
It does indeed.
Yeah. How about using money? Can you do that?
Every day.
Okay.
I do.
Too much.
So that doesn't cause you confusion?
No.
Okay. What things doesn't he do that you're still looking for progress?
Well, I think in the area of memory, that short-term memory is still a real difficult task for him.
His sense of humor is back, I think. So is it possible that you and I could discuss something now, and half an hour from now you might not remember what we talked about?
That's very possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you use any kind of...
it's very likely.
Is that right? Yeah. Do you use aids then to help you get through a day? Do you make notes as to where you've been, who you talk to, what you talk about, things you have to do?
All day long.
Okay.
I make notes after each therapeutic session, who I talked to, what we talked about, and I go back and review those every night, just so I can refresh my memory.
So it is a full-time job for you. That's what you're going through. It's hard work, isn't it?
Very hard work.
Let's go to the audience. Greg has a question.
Yeah, hi, Steve. I just want to know what type of support the other hydroplane drivers gave to you after your accident. I know the old boy Alberto Pitt were racing for Steve Reynolds on the back of their boat, but what other type of support did you get from them?
Well, the friends that I have established on Unlimited Racing, it's almost undescribable. You know, the amount of support they've given me over the months that I've been hurt, from the drivers, the crew members, the crew chiefs, they've all been fantastic. They're a great bunch of guys. Great bunch of guys.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Bill.
Yeah, Steve, you've accrued a number of deficits as a result of the accident, and you've come back a long way, and it's obvious. What deficit now that you feel you still have that you have the worst time dealing with?
I think the deficits that I have now that's the hardest to deal with is memory and attention. And focusing on getting back to normal life. It's hard to deal with.
That adjustment.
The adjustment to that, yeah.
How, Kathy, in your work with Steve, do you measure progress, and can you see it, and do you report that progress to him?
You bet. We have weekly progress from Steve as far as monthly conferences that we set goals. Each treatment team has set goals, and then they work on those goals all month long, and then we come together and reevaluate what the weaknesses still are, what the progress has been made, and then we make future goals for the coming month. Okay. And Steve has made real consistent progress, and he's a great asset at the center to the other participants as well.
Do I pay you now or later?
The question may arise, can Steve expect to recover completely, and how long a process will that be for him? We'll see what lies ahead for Steve Reynolds right after this. Steve Reynolds is with us, along with therapist Kathy Miller. How far ahead do you like to look, or are you kind of taking things one day at a time?
Well, when I first got involved in therapy, I was looking years ahead. Mm-hmm. Now I've become a little more adjusted to reality, and it's a day at a time.
Yeah, probably the best way to approach things.
Absolutely the best way.
Is it realistic to talk with a patient like Steve about what you can expect from a recovery?
Yes and no. Head injuries are very unpredictable. You never know the amount of progress an individual is going to make. But we, of course, like to prepare an individual for independent living and for vocational placement and the adjustments that he'll have to deal with once back out into the community. So we try to prepare them as much as possible.
How do you feel physically today?
Physically, I feel fine.
Do you have headaches?
No.
No headaches?
None at all.
Now, you broke an ankle.
Yes.
In the boat. How's the ankle?
Fine, just fine.
Okay, and you dislocated an elbow pretty badly.
Yeah, I did. That'll be operated on. This has calcium built up here. This is as far as I can bend it. It's right here.
Okay.
This will be operated on the middle of next 2 weeks. All right. Put it that way.
But physically, you're in pretty good shape.
Physically, I'm just fine.
All right. Back to the audience. Howard has a question.
Yes, Steve, are you planning on being able to get back to racing at all?
Next year's a long way away. Take a look at the rehab and how it's coming. I'll make the decision with the crew when the time comes.
We all hope to see you back there racing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know you have remained very close to crew chief Jim Lucero through all of this. Who else, Steve, through this process of recovery has been particularly valuable to you and kind of crucial in your recovery?
Well, I have to look at the employees of Competition Specialties, which is owned by Steve Woomer, who owns the boat. Mm-hmm. He has been my constant companion, Steve has, since the time of the accident. And we become so close. Aside from the closest I share with Jim Lucero, the two of them have been instrumental in my recovery, just by their friendship they've given me and the support they've given me. And the crew of the boat, too. They've always been there. If I ever asked for a thing, they could always cooperate, or they would always cooperate. And all the people at Comp, and my daughter. My daughter's been the biggest supporter, and my mom has just been great.
It's amazing how nice qualities you see in human beings when you need them most, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, comment for us. We've talked about frustration. How about depression? Do you get depressed?
Yeah. I get depressed just as often as I get frustrated.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is that something you work on, Kathy?
Sure,
Because that would be an obvious byproduct of all
You
this.
bet. Steve has a big adjustment because he was this big celebrity, and now he's kind of taken a different role in life, and just dealing with himself and dealing with the changes cognitively, that's been a big adjustment, and that often causes a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration. But in the psychosocial area, Steve has really learned some good techniques to, you know, if it takes to go outside a minute and take a walk around the block, or leave, you know, for the day, then he does that. But he's dealing very well.
What do you do when you get depressed?
Do
you go for a walk?
I literally go for a walk.
Do you?
Yeah. Excuse me, I say, I've got to go for a walk, and
In
I
fact,
get
he
out
did that
and I
to me
walk around.
yesterday.
I did to her yesterday.
Oh, so you'll walk out of a therapy session and go for a walk.
I will.
All right.
Yeah.
And it works?
Yes, it does. Puts
All
me
right.
back in the right frame of mind that I need to conduct myself in a very receptive manner.
Yeah.
If when I'm in that condition of frustration or depression, I'm not becoming better. I'm not listening to the therapists.
Yeah. I don't want to press you real hard on this point, but I'd love it if you would comment to us. So much criticism is always aimed at the sport. After an accident like yours, after we lose somebody like Bill Munsey, you know, the headlines will read, this is not a safe sport any longer. What are your comments on unlimited hydroplane racing?
My comments are that I think they need to enforce the rule to capsulize every boat that's running.
They're not all capsulized
No,
now.
they're not. And they need to encapsulize every boat, because it obviously saved my life. Without it, I wouldn't be here. Without that precaution taken, I think the sport is going backward a step. I think the speeds that we're traveling now and the way the boats are constructed, they need to be encapsulated. And I thank God that Jim Lucero, the crew chief, and Steve Woomer, the owner, decided to encapsulate me 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When, at the moments that I mentioned, when we lost, and obviously they were for you, losses of good friends, people like
Very
Muncy
close.
and the other drivers, you know,
Yeah.
whose lives have been claimed by the sport. Did you ever entertain the notion then, Steve, of getting out of it?
No, not really. I was there for the thrill of the whole thing, and when you're traveling at the speeds we were traveling and competing, you know, neck to neck with other guys, the thrill was ever present. It was always there. If I ever viewed it as a sport that was potentially dangerous to me, that I couldn't control, then I would have stepped out.
Is he a pretty good patient, Kathy?
Pardon me?
Is he a pretty good patient?
He's a great patient.
Would you call him a model patient?
Yes, I would classify him as a model patient.
That's the nicest thing she said to me in about 3 weeks.
2 months. Well, Steve, let me say again, at the risk of repeating myself, you'll do look really good.
Thank you.
And it's just delightful to see you back, and,
Thank you.
we're glad you're well and working on this rehabilitative process. We hope you'll come back and see us again on
I
Northwest
promise you I
Afternoon.
will.
Kathy, thank you for being
Thank
here.
you
Thank
very
you, my
much.
friend.
We'll be
Pleasure.
right back.